love this story. So many things that Jesus did with the disciples, I can touch them, I can get them, but the thought of just having a charcoal fire on the beach with Jesus, I can just get there right away. Particularly because of a memory of mine when I was, 6, 7, 8 years old. We were living in Durango, Colorado, and one of my father's best buddies from the war, they were both pilots together, came for a visit. We went fishing, the three of us. My dad, Mike, and young me. And they were both fly fishermen. So we came to a river. I can see the other side of the river, big cliff, rock face, and water coming down, a little skiffle, through the river, little rapids breaking over the rocks, and that's where they were tossing their flies. And they gave me a pole and put me in a little quiet pond off to the side. And not too long, they both caught fish, and they got the fire going, got the charcoal going, and started cooking the fish in a pan there, and I put down my pole and came over to join them for lunch. And my dad said, "Well, where's your fish?" I have to catch my own lunch? You don't catch, you don't eat. So I was so scared. So I thought I was going to be hungry. But he was doing this to me, but I went and I put my pole and bait back in the water, and sure enough, I did catch a fish. Put it right on that frying pan and got to eat right along with Dad and Mike, and it was the best fish I ever had. It's a true story, but it's not about fishing. It's about trusting. It's about trusting that abundance that's available in the river that we can't see, but we trust is there. And taking some kind of risk to put ourselves out into that mysterious flowing water in hopes that we might draw out what will sustain us, what will feed us, what will nurture us. My dad was trusting the river, maybe even more than me. But he was encouraging me to be courageous, to take a risk, to put myself into a place of potentially receiving abundance and grace. This is the same thing with our story this morning. It's a fish story, but it's not so much about fishing. It appears that at least 7 of the disciples have gone back to what was familiar to them, fishing. It had been such a roller coaster of an emotional time for them these last few weeks, and on this particular evening, their efforts yielded nothing. But they had been through so much together. The triumphal entry into Jerusalem, the Last Supper, that intimate supper that they shared with the disciples, the Garden of Gethsemane, the arrest, the crucifixion, the silence, and then stories, visions, an empty tomb, Jesus coming to them, appearing to them in a locked room. There are all these things happening. What's happening here? I don't understand what's happening. I'm so disappointed that what I wanted to have happen isn't happening. But what is going on? They were experiencing all that. And so here we are at this time, just 3 weeks after all this happened. The crucifixion and the resurrection, whatever that meant and was. And they're there all night long with their nets on one side of the boat. And I kind of put myself into this story this week, thinking about this. Kind of want to jump right to the next part of the story. I think about the disciples. I actually think about them in that boat, and they're in that grieving time. That time when you just find yourself so overwhelmed with your grief, you go through motions, but you're not accomplishing anything. You go to what's familiar, but there's no life in it anymore because you're just carrying this grief. And so even though it looks like you're not doing anything, you're actually doing some very important work. And that is the work of grieving. And then there comes a moment in this time where Jesus says, okay, that's good you did that. It's good you had that silent time. It's good you had that time of being alone and being quiet and resting on the mystery. But now it's time for something new. So what I want you to do is cast your net to the other side. Try something different. So he begins with asking them a question. They don't know it's him. It's kind of dark, it's kind of early in the morning. He's been frequently making appearances to people, but not being recognized visually. With Mary Magdalene, it was his voice in the garden on the morning of Easter. The disciples, it was the breath of peace, even though they were behind closed, locked doors. How could he physically get in there? But he got in there with his presence and his blessing. And now here on the shores of the Sea of Tiberias, they don't see him, but they hear his voice. And his voice shows them where abundance can be found. His voice shows them where a new beginning can be found. His voice shows them where their true calling is now. It's so easy for me to imagine that grieving, and not knowing what to do yet, being lost and wandering and going back to what's familiar. It's comforting, and yet still feeling something's missing. We all know that feeling. Sitting in the boat in the dark, nets on one side, all night, sitting, grieving, remembering, suddenly a voice that says first, have you caught any fish? Well, as a matter of fact, no, we haven't caught any fish. What are you doing there? Fishing. Have you caught any fish? No. Have you tried the other side? Sure, we'll try the other side. There's this moment where Jesus offers them in this, let's just play with this for a moment, this grieving. He calls them to an insight. Oh my gosh, that's right, we've been sitting here all night, not doing anything, holding our grief, but it is time to do something different. Insight. Yeah, we're not catching any fish. We need to do something. Well, try the other side. Try something different than what you've been doing. Insight. And then, of course, the net's all filled with fish. They have new things, and then you got to bring it to shore. You got to hold that insight in this net that you've got. You got to hold this insight long enough that it becomes something that you can then put on a fire. You can turn it into something that you can share with somebody else. So you have this insight that Jesus offers them. This isn't working. You try something new and it starts to work, but you got to keep practicing it. You got to keep doing it. You got to haul it in. This net, you got to bring it to shore. Okay, you brought it to shore. Now what? Let's turn it into food. Let's turn it into something we can share with one another. It's so sweet to see this moment with Jesus on the shoreline. He's got the fire going. He's apparently already been fishing. Because he's got fish on the frying pan too. He doesn't cook their fish, he cooks his own fish first that he's caught. But then he does this wonderful thing. Bring some of your fish too. We got a big feast going on here. I need what you have to offer to make this feast happen. It's not just my fish. It's not just my bread. It's what we do together that makes this all happen. This isn't just a fishing story. It's a story of healing from grief and from fear, both of which the disciples were feeling, and returning them and us back to our calling. the last line of this gospel passage. I never read it the way I read it this week. Because you just keep catching that to see Jesus is not to see the person, it's to see the action. To see Jesus is to see an act of compassion, an act of caring, an act of love. That's when you see. So when it says, this is the third time that Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead, I wonder if anyone's been keeping count since then. What's the count now? A billion, a billion, gazillion? How many times? I also got thinking about this as an interim minister. This whole passage. Have you caught any fish? Try the other side. One of my roles as an interim minister is just to say, have you caught any fish? What you doing? How's it working for you? Well, these things are going really well, and these things aren't going so well. Let's love the things we're doing well and do more of those, and let's give a little attention to those things we aren't doing so well. Is that a pretty good description of what we've been doing here the last 14 months? So much to celebrate just this morning, like the gifts of Flint. And how did you all sound like 25 people this morning?
Loaves and fishes.
Loaves and fishes. It's happening all the time. Jesus, I've seen Jesus here this morning. And we've been looking at other things too. And both, it's really amazing this confluence that's happening right now is that you've got your pastoral search committee almost ready to make an announcement sometime soon, and Sanctuary Renovation ready to make an announcement or share their recommendations to you all sometime soon. Boy, talk about trying another side. You all are going to be asked to be trying another minister and another look in your whole sanctuary. Because you're being called to something new. You're being called to a new era and a new history. And there's some things that are just so beautiful in this sanctuary, but it's also time to let them go. For something else to happen here that you all want to see happen here. And I don't know, I don't stay connected to search committees when I'm an interim minister, but I know that from my experience, it's the most vital call is when the new minister is just maybe a few years ahead of you, in the sense of something to offer that you have not seen yet, that's in that mystery of the water. We'll love you as you are, but it's also got some stretching to do, some new sides of the boat for you to try. So this is this moment that you're all in. It's a good place to be. Especially when you remember to be kind to one another. To share what's in your heart, whatever it is. To share your voice into the circle. At the same time, you're listening to everyone else in the circle. That becomes a loaves and fishes kind of a moment. I wanted to share with you one other story I read this week. It's a loaves and fishes story. And it's told by my mentor, Parker Palmer. He writes, after his speech in Saskatoon, I boarded a 6 a.m. Air Canada flight home to Wisconsin. Our departure was delayed because the truck that brings coffee to the planes had broken down. After a while, the pilot said, we're going to take off without the coffee. We want to get you to Detroit on time. I was up front where all the road warriors sit, a surly tribe, especially at that early hour. They began griping loudly and at length about incompetence, lousy service. Once we got into the air, the lead flight attendant came to the center of the aisle with her microphone and said, good morning. We're flying to Minneapolis today at an altitude of 30 feet. That, of course, evoked more scorn from the road warriors. Then she said, now that I have your attention, I know you're upset about the coffee. Well, get over it. Start sharing your stuff with our seatmates. That bag of 5 peanuts you got on your last flight, put it in your pocket, tear it open and pass them around. Got gum or mints? Share them. You can't read all the sections of your newspaper at once. Share a section. Offer them to each other. Show off the pictures of your kids and your grandkids that you have in your wallets or smartphones. As she went on in that vein, people began laughing and doing what she had said to do. A surly scene turned into a summer camp. An hour later, the attendant passed by my seat and I signaled to her, what you did was really amazing. Where can I send a letter of commendation? Thanks, she said. I'll get you a form. And then she leaned down and she whispered, the loaves and fishes aren't dead. Jesus isn't dead. Acts of compassion and kindness and generosity, comfort in moments of grieving, still alive, still here. Miracles all the time. People are hungry, and one good word is bread for 1,000. Be a moment of a good word. Be a moment where you ask for a good word because that's what you need now. And then what you bring and what you learn from that moment, bring it to the shoreline. Bring it to the shoreline and share it with others. Because where we stumble and where we fly are both things that we all need to share together because we're in this boat together. Let the people say. Amen. Invite us to sing together. I hope it's on the right page. You walk along our shoreline, number 504.
you.